Corda. Hello everyone. I'm Sarah and I am a magician. Using the magical transformation powers of my wand, I am going to transform you all into storytellers. Did it work? Are you storytellers? Okay, it didn't work. I am going to go to plan B, which is using magic fairy dust. Using the special transformative powers of my magic fairy dust, I am going to transform you all into poets. Did that work? That has to have worked, did it? What? You're not poets? Okay, you got me. Not really a magician. I'm a storyteller. But when you think about it, storytellers and poets are kind of like magicians. We take words and with them we create poems and stories. And when you read or hear those poems and stories, the pictures come alive in your imagination and you're transported to a whole other place. Magic. I have somebody that I want to talk to you about today. Do you know who this is? His name is Seamus Heaney, and he was a very famous Irish poet. He took some really simple concepts and everyday occurrences that happened in his life, and he transformed them into the most beautiful poems. I want to share some of those poems with you today. And I want to tell you some stories about Seamus when he was a little boy. How do I know about these stories? Because he wrote about them in his poems. And then at the very end, you're going to see that you can use the powers of transformation to turn yourself into a poet or a storyteller. And we don't even need to use my magic wand. You don't believe me? Well, you're just going to have to see how the magic works. I'm going to begin my story the way a lot of stories begin, with 4 words. Maybe you know them too. Once upon a time. There lived 2 people called Patrick and Margaret Heaney, and they had a little boy who they called Seamus. So Seamus had lots of brothers and sisters to play with and have adventures with and run around with. They grew up on a farm in County Derry. So they were surrounded by nature and animals and green and trees, and they had lots and lots of fun. Seamus helped on the farm with the digging and the looking after animals. He also liked to help around the house. So he did things like peeling potatoes, hanging out the washing, and other household jobs. How do I know all of this? Because Seamus wrote all about it in his poems. But hold on a second. Poems aren't stories, or are they? A poet will often cleverly construct a story into a really tight space called a poem. A poet's job is to cleverly construct words that make us hear, see, smell, taste, and even feel what they're feeling. When I read some of Seamus's poems for you, you'll see exactly what I mean. And I think you might agree that a poem is like a mini, squeezed in story. When Seamus was a little boy, there weren't many sweets or fruits available to buy in the shops. Right now, if I want a certain type of sweet or fruit, I can buy them pretty much any time of the year I want. But back then, that wasn't the case. So every year, at the end of August, which is the beginning of autumn, the children would go looking for these. Can you guess what they are in my jam pot? Let's open it up and see. They're black and they're sweet and juicy. That's right, blackberries. Oscuelga smera dova. Now blackberries grow naturally on the Irish hedgerows. They're wild and the bushes have thorns on them. So you need to be careful when you're picking them. Seamus wrote all about his experience of blackberry picking in a poem, which of course he called Blackberry Picking. Every year the kids would rush out to pick the blackberries, and every year Seamus would hope that the blackberries would last as long as possible because he loved eating them. But that plan never worked out. I'm going to read this poem for you now, and I want you to listen carefully and see if you can spot some things that he mentions. How does he describe the blackberries? What colours does he mention? Can you tell, is he happy or is he sad in the poem? And can you figure out what happens to the blackberries at the end of the poem? Sometimes it helps if we close our eyes when we listen to a poem, because it helps us to imagine the pictures in our head a lot better. So if you want, you can close your eyes and listen to the poem and see what pictures you see. Blackberry picking. Late August, given heavy rain and sun for a full week, the blackberries would ripen. At first, just one, a glossy purple clot among others, red, green, hard as a knot. You ate that first one and its flesh was sweet, like thickened wine. Summer's blood was in it, leaving stains upon the tongue and a lust for picking. Then red ones inked up, and that hunger sent us out with milk cans, pea tins, jam pots, where briars scratched and wet grass bleached our boots. Round hayfields, cornfields and potato drills we trekked and picked until the cans were full, until the tinkling bottom had been covered with green ones, and on top big dark blobs burned like a plate of eyes. Our hands were peppered with thorn pricks, our palms sticky as bluebeards. We hoarded the fresh berries in the byre, but when the bath was filled, we found a fur, a rat grey fungus glutting on our cache. The juice was stinking too. Once off the bush, the fruit fermented. The sweet flesh would turn sour. I always felt like crying. It wasn't fair that all the lovely canfuls smelt of rot. Each year I hoped they'd keep, and knew they would not. In poems, sometimes we don't understand all of the words, but that's fine. That's how we build our vocabulary. If there are any words that you didn't understand in that poem, you can look them up, write it down, and then maybe see if you could use the word yourself again. You don't need to understand every single word. Now, did anybody hear what colours Seamus describes? He says purple. Did anyone get red? Did anyone hear green? Are there any that I'm missing that maybe you heard and I've forgotten about? He also cleverly described a certain colour in a phrase he used, summer's blood. Now when I say blood, what colour do you think of? That's right, red, a nice bright red. So do you see how he used the words to make us think of that colour without actually saying it? Now let's talk about how he felt. How did he feel in that poem, do you think? At the beginning of the poem, he's so excited, getting his blackberries and picking them with everybody. But at the end, he's sad. And then that leads me to my final question. Who figured out what happened to the blackberries at the very end of the poem? That's right. All of them began to rot, because that's what happens with fruit. It doesn't keep for as long as we might like it to. So it started to grow a fur, and it smelt of rot. Even if you don't know what that smell is like, you can be pretty sure it's not very nice. So this is how Seamus was able to describe his experience of blackberry picking with us. My next story about little boy Seamus is a bit of a scary one. Are you brave enough to listen? In the water of the Irish marshlands and bogs, mysterious creatures lurk. In the bottom of the dark, murky pools, who knows what might just pop up? Behold, a terrifying creature from the deep. No, not really. That's my dog Winnie. We took her for a trip to the bog and she fell down a muddy black bog hole and came out looking like that. Pretty scary when you don't understand what it is, right? And that's what happened to little boy Seamus. He would love going exploring in the marshlands. And when he was there, he would take his jam pot. Let's get the jam pot again and see what's in it this time. He'd take his jam pot and he would collect green slime. This is my green slime, so I can show you kind of what it was like. But what he would collect was frog spawn, which is slimy too. Real frog spawn. This frog spawn just looks like frog spawn. Each one is a little egg that the frog lays, and together it's called frog spawn. The little black dots inside are tadpoles that hatch out and turn into, of course, frogs. So Seamus would take his jam pot and he would fill it with frog spawn and he would take it to show his teacher and his friends. He loved doing this. I mean, who wouldn't? It's lovely slime. But what he didn't count on happening was that when he would go back one day, the slime would have turned into big frogs. Now, I've never seen lots of frogs together at once, and I've never heard them either, but you can be sure that it might be pretty scary. If you look it up on YouTube, you can hear the sound of croaking frogs, and it's not a fun sound to hear. So you can imagine what it was like for little boy Seamus when he turned up going to collect some frog spawn and actually found scary frogs. I know this story because he wrote all about it in a poem called Death of a Naturalist, which I'm going to read to you now. While I read it, I want you to think of 3 questions. See if you can find the answers to these. 1. What is the name of Seamus's teacher? 2. What insects does he mention in the poem? And 3. What colours does he say that the frogs are? Remember, if you want, you can close your eyes if it helps you to picture it better in your own imagination. So you can close your eyes now and listen. And again, don't worry if you don't understand all the words. You can ask an adult later or look them up. Death of a Naturalist. All year the flax dam festered in the heart of the townland, green and heavy-headed. Flax had rotted there, weighted down by huge sods. Daily it sweltered in the punishing sun. Bubbles gargled delicately. Bluebottles wove a strong gauze of sound around the smell. There were dragonflies, spotted butterflies, but best of all was the warm, thick slobber of frog spawn that grew like clotted water in the shade of the banks. Here, every spring, I would fill jam potfuls of the jellied specks to range on windowsills at home, on shelves at school, and wait and watch until the fattening dots burst into nimble swimming tadpoles. Miss Walls would tell us how the daddy frog was called a bullfrog, and how he croaked, and how the mammy frog laid hundreds of little eggs, and this was frog spawn. You could tell the weather by frogs too, for they were yellow in the sun and brown in the rain. Then, one hot day, when fields were rank with cow dung in the grass, the angry frogs invaded the flax dam. I ducked through hedges to a coarse croaking that I had not heard before. The air was thick with a bass chorus. Right down the dam, gross-bellied frogs were cocked on sods. Their loose necks pulsed like sails. Some hopped. The slap and plop were obscene threats. Some sat poised like mud grenades, their blunt heads farting. I sickened, turned, and ran. The great slime kings were gathered there for vengeance, and I knew that if I dipped my hand, the spawn would clutch it. So, who was able to picture this poem? Could you hear how scared he got at the end? What did he do at the end of the poem? That's right, he ran away from the frogs because he was so scared of them. The frog spawn had turned into frogs. Now, what about the questions I asked you? What was the name of Seamus's teacher? That's right, it was Miss Walls. Well done. What insects does he mention? That's right, he mentions bluebottles, which are a type of fly, dragonflies and butterflies. And finally, what colours does he say that the frogs are? Well, the exact line is, you could tell the weather by frogs too, for they were yellow in the sun and brown in the rain. Well done, everybody. Maybe you spotted even more than I did. And if you did, that's really good observation. Now, I think it might be time for us to try to write our own poem. Are you still scared of it, or are you ready? Great. Grab a pen and a paper and come with me. Are you ready to become a poet? Do you have your notebook or your paper and a pen? If you do, we can get started. I can't think of anything to write about. I think I need a bit of inspiration. Remember, Seamus Heaney took inspiration from really simple everyday things, such as blackberries in a jam pot, frog spawn in a jam pot, digging with his father, peeling potatoes, hanging clothes on the line, and household chores. So they weren't really very interesting things, you would think, but he managed to create beautiful poems from them that really drew us into the story and let us know what life was like in Ireland back when he was a child. So you never know who might one day read your poems and think that they're actually fascinating. So to get a bit of inspiration, what I like to do is I like to close my eyes and take a few deep breaths and then see what I can hear and what I can see surrounding me. So let's try that now. Close your eyes, take a big deep breath in through your nose. Hold it 1, 2, 3, 4 and let it out through your mouth. Now listen, what can you hear? Open your eyes and write down 4 words to describe what you just heard. I'm going to write some words on the screen so it might give you an idea of something to write. So I could hear a washing machine. I could hear a dog barking. Now technically that's 4 words, but I can keep going if I've heard even more. I could hear the birds singing. And I could hear people laughing outside. So I'll write people laughing. They're just some of the things that you might be able to hear. Let's try it again, this time with what we can see. Close your eyes. Take a big deep breath in through your nose. Hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out slowly. Now open your eyes. What can you see? I can see my desk. I can see some books. And I can see the window and the light up above my head. Now you might see those things, or you could see other things. It's really fun to do this when you're outside in nature. When you have all of your words gathered together, if you haven't been inspired by anything that you've seen around you, you can take some of the words that I showed on the screen there. You can rewind and pause and write them down for yourself and try writing a poem. But sometimes when I'm stuck for ideas, it's nice to go for a walk in nature. And as we know from Seamus Heaney's poems, he wrote so many beautiful poems all about nature. So I thought I'd take you on a little walk through nature by myself. So I did a little video, and I want you to watch it, and I want you to see what you can see and listen to what you can hear. And maybe this time, see what you're feeling as well. Does it make you feel calm and relaxed, or excited, or maybe angry? It's up to you. Hello, my little poets. Tá fáilte rómha rais. Did you enjoy your inspirational walk through nature? Did you write down a few words? Maybe some of you have even written a poem already. If you haven't written one, don't worry. Sometimes it can take a while for all the ideas to come together to create a poem. Keep taking your notebook with you everywhere you go. Write down ideas. You never know where you might find a new idea. Remember, your poem doesn't have to rhyme. Some of the best poems don't. See, I told you I'd turn you into poets, and I didn't even need to use my magic wand or my magic fairy dust. You did it all yourself, with a little help from a jam pot of blackberries and a jam pot of frog spawn. We would love to hear your poems. So please share them with us. You can email Lisa at this email address. Please include your name, age, and a few lines about what inspired your poem. And now, like all good stories, this one must come to an end. I'm sure you're wondering what happened to that little boy, Seamus Heaney. Well, as you know, he grew up to become a very famous poet. Sadly, he died in 2013 at the age of 74. He achieved so much in his lifetime that I can't fit it into this short video, including winning a Nobel Prize. Before he died, he gave so much of his stuff to the National Library of Ireland on Laurelin Náisiúnta na hÉireann, and they were able to turn it into an exhibition called Listen Now Again. I really hope you get to go and visit this exhibition, because there you will find actual notebooks that Seamus Heaney wrote in, drafts of some of his poems and photographs, and a lot of memorabilia. So much so that you'll nearly feel like you were in Seamus Heaney's life when you've been in the exhibition. Please visit. Sin deran scéal fáistí, tá súlagam gur bhain sibh sult as mo chud scéalaíocht, faoi buachal, filla agus fear, darbh anam Seamus Heaney. That's the end of the stories now, kids. I hope you really enjoyed hearing my stories about the man, the boy and the poet that was Seamus Heaney. Happy writing, everyone!